All right, welcome back to another Learn PowerShell video. This is video 3 of the series, and in this video, we're going to exponentially increase what we're looking at and working on. So we're going to be working on a script in its entirety. So this is a project to make a dictionary in PowerShell. And so some background here is I was working on this for several hours the other day, and I decided that because of all the errors that I'd come across and all the things that I had stumbled upon, things that I thought I knew that I was doing wrong, I wanted to take the time to show all of you. So with that, I'm going to turn this into a two-part video. We're going to go through it and kind of work out all the kinks, and I'll show you some of the kinks that I have come across. Um, and kind of explain this. So how this came to be is turns out that we don't own a dictionary in our house, and my son needed one for school. Um, Obviously, we have our phones, we have tablets, we have laptops, we have Google Nest Hubs, Alexas. Just like every other home these days, there's really no need for a physical dictionary. They're outdated after a year or two anyway. But when they can't get electronics when they're doing their homework and things, this just would have made more sense. So what I'm doing is making something that I can give to him on one of the laptops and confine him to it. So um, that's how this project was born. I went out to Google to try to find a document of some sort or a repository that I could get API access to, anything. And I ended up finding 26 Excel files split into each individual letter. So let me show you those. So let's just do dictionary files, and let's do so I have all the files in this directory. So if I just type dictionary files, you'll see all the files here, A through Z. So now that we know there's 26 different files, some of them are extremely large. S is massive, uh, P is pretty large, C is extremely large as well. There's a lot of collection of words in these, so I'll show you that in a second. So firstly, what we need to do to make sure that we're just working off of one file is just combine all of that into one variable. So we're going to do this. We're just going to call it combine letters. I'm going to line these up. And so we're just going to say that for each file in dictionary files, which is all 26 of these, we're going to import CSV. Let me change this from the shorthand. I usually write in aliases, but if you do, VS Code will tell you that it is an alias and could possibly introduce problems and make scripts hard to maintain. It also makes it hard for people that don't know the command, the alias. So you should always try to avoid writing in aliases if someone else is going to see or use your scripts. Even if you believe they know it, it just makes it easier for anyone else they might share it with or anyone else that's going to see it to understand what's going on. So we're going to import these CSVs in order and by the full name of the file. So the full name is, the directory with this file name plus the extension after it. So it's going to import those. So I'll let it do this. So I'm going to let this run. I'm going to stop it pretty quickly. So you can see that there's a lot of words here. There's also duplicates. So like alkanet, right? There's 3 entries. There's several entries. And this is because there's several different versions of the word. As you can see, there's an adjective, 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 adverb, adverb, noun, conjunction. So there's a lot of entries, which is something that we're going to have to account for because we may not necessarily want to see 27 different entries, but we'll come to that later. So firstly, I guess what we need to do is kind of only work on the first entry and code from there. Treat the first entry like the rest of the, 200,000 there are, because if we tried coding for all 200,000 at once, we know we'd never accomplish anything. So if we start with the first one, try to get all the kinks out, and then come across any errors that are there then further down the line, then we can just handle those errors as one-offs rather than trying to study all 200,000 entries and then write code. You'll never get anywhere that way. So firstly, let's just start with for each entry in combined letters. And again, we're only coding for the first entry, so I'm just gonna stop it with the first entry. So what this is just gonna do is I'm gonna have a for each. I'm gonna know that the for each works on the first entry. So hopefully I can just take this out and run it against every other following entry in the dictionary that we're making. But as you guys have seen in previous videos, a lot of what I'm going to do is what you guys have learned in the last 2 or 3 videos, so including the introduction. So taking this 0 out lets it run against the whole thing. Adding the 0 says we only want the first entry, and that's going to store combine letters 0, which I can show you, as entry. You can see a couple of things here that we're going to address, but let me just run this and I'll save it to entry. Okay, so now that we have our entry, which is the variable we know we're going to be working from while we're coding, we can continue. So one of the first things that we need to address here is this. And the reason we need to address this is because I don't ever want, this isn't a word, it's not a definition. So it's just kind of a break, and what it's a break between is the multiple definitions for a word is what it looks like, because we have a, and this is the first entry. So these are seen as one object. So we need to just get rid of this, and then we'll find a way to combine these definitions with this word afterwards. So I'm going to save this separator as its own variable, because we're going to say later that we want to split these items at that separator. All right, so from here what we need to do is now figure out what I'm looking at. So if I do entry.getType, I see that it's actually a PS custom object. I can't do much with this as far as manipulating what's here. So I need to convert it to a string, and that's the very first step. So what I'm going to do is say, we're just going to typecast it, and this is called typecasting. I've shown you guys this in another video. Entry equals entry. So what this does is change that PS custom object to a string object that we can work with now. Because we can manipulate strings, we have the split method, we have the replace, we have a lot of string manipulation techniques that we can use to change what you see in this entry. So the next thing we need to do is kind of look at it again. And normally you wouldn't typically do this, but I do want you guys to see what I came across. Is now, because it's modified the object and it sees this as a hash table, it added this @ symbol and curly bracket to the beginning and end. So we need to get rid of that first and foremost, because it doesn't need to exist. And actually changing it to a string looks like it got rid of this separator. So we may not even need to address this at all, but we can address, look at that in a little bit. So let's get rid of the brackets that are there. So say replace, and let's replace curly bracket with nothing. And so what this is going to do, and I'll show you, is get rid of that first one. And to get rid of that second one, we can do it one of two ways. We can, on a whole new line, excuse me, on a whole new line, we can do this all over again with the end curly bracket, or we can put this again in parentheses, which will allow PowerShell to address it as an order of operations, and say we want to replace that close bracket with nothing as well. So what this is going to do is get rid of that close bracket. And if you remember math in elementary school, junior high, high school, I'm sure you remember order of operations. You address the innermost parentheses first and work your way out, and then address anything outside of the parentheses last. And that's exactly what PowerShell and I think almost all other scripting languages do. This is not a very hard concept. So let's call this new entry. So this is going to be our new entry because now we've gotten rid of some of the things that we needed to get rid of, but we still need to work with this. So let's save that to new entry. So from here, we need to separate the word from the definitions. So I'm going to call this word actual. And we're going to say, actually, before I put it in parentheses, new entry. And what, like looking at this, there's clearly some other things I see I need to get rid of. Firstly, I don't really need to do it here, but I'm going to because I don't want to see this and I don't want to keep rewriting the code. So I'm going to get rid of these weird parentheses forward slashes because they don't need to exist. So what that looks like is actually like this. And so this, to get rid of this, you have to use some key escaping because if I just do, and I'll delete this for your benefit, this, and I want this space here because as you can see, there's a space, whoops. As you can see, there's a space before and after these brackets. So if I don't add a space to delete as well, then I'm gonna have two spaces here, and that will cause problems later. So I wanna get rid of one of the spaces as well. So if I do this, you'll see that I actually didn't get rid of anything. And that's a problem, obviously, because I need to get rid of stuff. So I need to add in these backslashes because they actually tell PowerShell that I'm not trying to write anything like code related. I'm trying to escape it. I want to get rid of these characters. So if I run this now, you'll see that those are gone. First letter of the Phoenician, first letter of the Phoenician. So that's perfect. It also got rid of the brackets here as well between the word and uh, the definition. So that actually really paid off for me. Saved me a lot of time later, so I don't have to try to manipulate things further. But then going one step further, I only want the word out of all of this. So I need to figure out how to get just that word. And maybe yeah, so we're gonna do a split method, and we're gonna split this at the space because there should only ever be a space between the word and the definition. I think I might be wrong. There might be no. See, this is hyphenated. Yeah, I don't think there's any two combined words in with a space, anyways, in the dictionary. But we'll check that out later. We'll address it later. I think there isn't. So we're gonna split it at space, and we're only gonna select the first entry. So if I split it at space, here's what happens. So we get every word individualized, but I only want the first word in the selection. So this just happens to be a letter in this case, and it's the letter A. So let's save that to word actual. So now we need to make sure that we also save the definitions because we don't want to get rid of them. And the logic there is going to be almost exactly the same, except we want to split this into two sections. So I'll show you what that looks like. So adding this comma 2 after the split tells PowerShell we actually only want two objects once we split this. I know there's hundreds of spaces here, but we only care about the first space you're going to come across. Everything else can be ignored. So it's going to say, okay, this is object 1 and this is object 2. So we're only going to select object 2, which is numbered at 1 because the numbering starts at 0 right here. We address that. And so now if I run this, we have just the definitions saved, which is great. We are in a great spot. And again, we saw earlier that there was 2 definitions attached to this single entry. So the next thing we need to do is address how to split the definitions, because we know that we need to be able to distinguish when a definition starts and when a definition ends, because otherwise, if you're not familiar, then you're going to just think this long-winded paragraph is the entire definition of the word a for one entry and not understand it at all. So we're going to say that, actually, let's figure this out. So it looks like right here, this equals sign is where it splits, because this is talking about tone and this is still talking about the Phoenician alphabet. So let's just say that if definitions is like equal, and I put the asterisk on either side because I don't care what is around it at all. I don't care what comes before it or after it. And I don't want to do anything heavy like regex to find out if there's an equal sign that exists using, match or contains or in, anything like that, because it's quite a bit heavier. I don't really care. And PowerShell can use wildcard searching and matching much faster and much more lightweight than something heavy like regex, which I understand it might be a little above, but changing this comparison operator from like to contains or in, we've got contains, we've got in, so there's match. So we don't want any of those. We just want this really simple, just wildcard search because it's lightweight. And there's, again, like 200,000 words or more. I mean, I have no idea how many words in the dictionary. So if it contains that, so what we're going to do is say that we're going to create a new variable called multiple definitions. And we're going to say definitions, and we're going to split it like we've been doing at the equal sign. And this is going to say that we don't really care how many definitions there are. There might be 4, 5, 10, who knows? We're not going to care. We don't want to code like that because there's, again, no way for us to know if one word has 63 definitions, depending on the word. So now we can see that there's a break here. So the Phoenician alphabet ends here, and the second definition ends here. So we're in a really good spot, So now we need to figure out how to classify each of these definitions. And to do that, we logically, in my head, I think the easiest thing to do is just say that if a definition exists, let's just number it a definition 1, definition 2, until there's no further definitions, and save those as their own definition variable. And to do that is a little advanced probably from where we've been with objects and loops, commandlets. So I'm going to walk you guys through this in pretty detail. This does use a while loop and also an if statement, which are things you guys have learned. It's just this dynamically creating a variable is something that you may not have seen or even thought about yet. So the first thing we need to do is a starting point. And I always like my starting point to be 0 because it just makes sense. And we're going to say while multiple, and then just say num. And so what I'm going to do here is, as long as there's an entry here in multiple num, so right now we have 2 entries for this one, so multiple 1 and multiple 2, and there's not a multiple 3. I know you see 0, 1, 2, but just remember you have to subtract 1 from the starting point in PowerShell. So there's not a multiple 2. So this is not going to run if num gets to the number 2. It's just not going to. It's going to check and say there are no further definitions. So that's going to be good. So what we need to do is we're going to say that, say new variable, and the name of that variable is going to be definition, and then we need to give it a number. So let's say this. So let's say that our def number, actually let's just call it D. Our definition number is going to be num plus 1 because num starts at 0. We want this to be definition 1. So let's say D. So this, let me run this, and just this to show you what that looks like. So then it just evaluates the definition 1, which is fantastic because this is going to be the first definition. And the value is going to be multiple, and it is going to be multiple num because we're on definition 1, which is multiple 0. If I try to make this the D as well, then I'm going to skip a definition always, and I'm always going to lose a definition in the process. And I don't want to do that. We have to make sure that the data is always good. And then I guess I want to increment the num by 1 because now I want it to iterate through the next definition. So let me run this, and let's see definition 1 and definition 2. Perfect. So there we have both definitions and they're separated, which is fantastic. That was fairly simple. I expect that it may have taken a little bit to look up how to dynamically create a variable name. If you had to do it on Google, maybe like 15 minutes. There is a problem here though. This second definition still retains the word, and we don't care because we already have the word saved to word actual. So I don't want to keep seeing the word because I already know what it is, and I'm trying to isolate the definitions from the words. So we need to get rid of that. So, and it looks like it only does it past the first definition. So I guess we can say that if our num is greater than 0, because that's the first one, then let's remove the word from the start, I guess. Hmm. Yeah, so I hope. So what I'm worried about is if I run a replace, it shouldn't. I mean, we'll find out, I guess. If num is greater than 0, then we're going to say this temp definition because we're trying to get rid of. So let's get variable because we don't know what variable we're actually working with at the moment. So definition, oh, actually, sorry, do it the same way. Definition D, and we want the value only. So I have definition 2 loaded up, so I can check the multiple num to show you, but actually I'll just do that. So let's just check num. So this should be 1. Oh, sorry, it's actually 2, but the D is 2 as well because it hasn't run through a third time. So the def number or the D number is 2, so definition 2, we want the value only. So if I run this and do temp def, then we have just that one, which is fine. And why I'm doing it this way rather than just using the definition, because I don't know which definition I'm working with, so I need to load whatever the most recent one was into memory. I guess I could just do it here, but this makes the most sense to me because I just dynamically do everything. So now we need to replace. So let's replace on temp definition. Replace word actual. And let's get rid of the space as well because there is a space here, and I don't want some weird erroneous space just hanging around. Let's replace it with nothing. And let me see what that looks like really quick. Okay, so this is actually bad. So it did get rid of like this right here between A and G and A sharp. So that's actually what I was worried about. So rather than do this, what we're going to do is another split, and we're going to split space again, and then we're just going to, so we're going to do it in 2 all over again, and select the second object. So yeah, okay, so that works better. And again, hopefully there are no words entries with spaces in them. There probably is. Like if coup de grace is in the dictionary, it is just a singular thing. But we'll, I guess, have to figure that out later. And then we're gonna just reset the variable. So reset variable name, definition D, value, and replace. So this will get rid of that word at the beginning and overwrite the current definition too. So there we go. We're in a good spot. So now that we have both definitions and we have the words separated, let's go ahead and figure out now what to do with that. So obviously we have no idea how many definitions there could be in any given word. We also have no idea, you know, the order we're going to get things. So we need to kind of do some structure here. Obviously we've talked about hash tables. Everything we've dealt with up to this point has been an array object or a string. But we're going to go back to hash tables. So if I look at multiple, and I'll show you guys because we have multiple definitions, and get type, it's a string array. So we're going to go to a hash table. And I mentioned in the objects video that hash tables are not ordered. They are unordered lists. So you can get random entries like wherever. So I'm going to show you guys this and then how to fix it. So I have to do a hash table because I need a key and a value, because I need to say that definition 1 is this definition. I need to say the definition 2 is this definition. And I need to say the word is this word. I need to make sure that I break these things out rather than trying to just dump it all into an array, because then I just kind of have a word and a bunch of definitions, a word and a bunch of definitions. And if I mess up the placement in there, I have no idea how to say what's what. I also have no type of key to say this, what you're looking at right here, is a word. So what I'm going to do is say that our word actual is our word, and I'm not going to add the definitions to this object yet. So all this looks like right here is this, where I have a word and I have the word. And the reason I don't want to add the definitions is because I don't know how many there are. So we're going to address that by saying for each number in, let's say 1 to D, I guess, because D works. We haven't overwritten D from here, and it should be the very last number. So we know that 1 and 2 are the things here. So if I do 1 to D, yeah, just 1 and 2. So that's perfect. So there's 2 definitions now, but there could be 20 or something later. Who knows? So let's just say we're going to load the definition, and we're going to say get variable again. We don't know which one we're on. And we're going to say definition and n, actually, and value only. So now we're saying the first time it runs is going to be 1, and the second time it runs it's going to be 2. N will be. So if we say n, we're going to get that definition. We want to get that value only loaded up, and then we're going to say that our output, which is this object right here, and then we're going to say that that is going to be definition n, which is going to be definition 1 or 2. And we want to add that, and we're going to add the definition to that definition number. So if I run this really quick, you'll see that our output now has both definitions. And again, remember, hash tables are not ordered lists. So I ended up getting definition 2 above word, even though I put word in first, and then definition 1 came last. It's just a jumbled mess. It's not really good. If you come up here and just before the @ symbol, add ordered, this will tell PowerShell that I need an ordered object. When you're using hash tables, the whole point of a hash table is that it's speed and it just kind of does whatever it thinks is fastest and easiest. It doesn't think, it just outputs stuff. You probably want to stay away from ordered hash tables, but I need the key value pair and I want to make sure that this stays in order. So what I'm going to do is now add these back and now look at my output and now it looks correct. So from here, I am in a great spot. There are some things that I need to address for like the next word in the dictionary, in the Excel files, because if I tried to do, and you guys, I mean, obviously I can just do definition 1 equals blah, and then say definition 1 and get that blah statement back. And that's fine. I can always override a variable. What I can't do is do new variable because it sees that I'm not making a new variable. This definition or this variable name definition 1 already exists. So I can't just do this because every single time that I run this in the next iteration, it's going to just give me an error every single time because definition 1 and definition 2 already exist. It may work for definition 3, but then if the next word ever in the dictionary is that third definition, it's going to give me another error, and I'm going to lose all these definitions because there's nothing to add. The variable hasn't been overwritten, so it's probably actually going to keep adding these same definitions to the next, who knows how many words. And it actually just, whether a word has two definitions or not, it's probably going to add both because they both still exist. So even if it only has one definition, like alkaline or something, then it's still going to add these two random definitions that don't make sense. So we need to get rid of these. And again, we don't know how many definitions there are. So we have to take that into account. We have to do this dynamically. So what we're going to do is we're going to get these variable names. If you've never seen get variable, this looks like this. It just tells you what variables are loaded and what's in them. Obviously, new entry has the whole thing. Up here we have definition 1 and 2. You can kind of come see any variables that you have going on. Whether they're credentials or whatever they are, you can kind of see all that. So we need to now take out anything like those definition numbers. So let's say where the object, and again, after the pipeline, you use this $_ to talk about the object you're working on. And I know that get variable, as you guys just saw, has the name and the value. So we need to only get the name because if I try to pass this whole object in and remove the whole thing, it's not going to work as anybody anticipates it to. So I only want the name, and if you scroll up, you can get the header that you would work on, just like you would in Excel. Just give it's just like an Excel header. So, and we're going to say like again, and we're going to say definition and asterisk. I don't care what definition number it is. I just want to get that. So now I have definitions, definition 1, definition 2. That's perfectly fine. I can get rid of this. It's not a big deal. This isn't going to make or break anything, and it's, I guess, better to just get rid of it as well. So we're going to get rid of that, and so the next thing we need to do is variables, and again, we're going to pipeline this. And so remember, and I'm probably going to keep saying this every time I show you, but pipeline always means take something on the left and do something with it on the right. So we're going to say for each object, and again, I'm not trying not to use aliases like I normally would, but there are easier ways to write this. And we're going to say remove variable, and we're going to say name is name. Actually, I guess I don't. Yeah, I do. Name dot force. And so if I do this and I do get variable, now definitions should be gone. Sweet, it is gone. It should have been right here, and it is not. Perfect. So let's come down here, and now we need to, I guess, add this input to our dictionary as a whole. So let's just say our dictionary, we're going to add the output. And if I do that, actually, I think I just, yeah, I don't want to do that. So let me move variable dictionary, whoops, dictionary. I'm going to come up here and actually declare dictionary as an array. So this will actually make it so I have an array, which is an ordered list, which is perfectly fine. I'm just going to keep adding to it. I don't need to make any changes. I don't need to do anything. And I can output an array very nicely to Excel or anything like that, as long as I address this key value headers and say that, you know, this is actually the header as opposed to this, because otherwise I'm going to get a jumbled mess, which I'll show you guys in part 2, I guess. Let's remove variable output just so we don't have any issues here as well. So this is part 1. This has already been 37 minutes, so I don't want to keep dragging this out. This will be part 1 of the video. I knew it was going to have to be in 2 parts. I'll do part 2 in a week or 2. I will have more videos between now and then, but I did want to show you guys I guess just how to stumble through writing your own script and errors and things that you guys may come across, and how to address them. This is a fairly simple project to work on. I will try to build some more that are as simple and have some of the same learning key points, but are completely different in their scope. So thank you, and I'll see you guys soon.